You're listening to We Ain't Dying for This, a Black woman's guide to liberation, and I'm your host, Crystle Johnson. We are a community of Black women demanding our collective liberation through radically soft living. Each week, we share the stories of Black women who have set themselves free from the expectations of others and are living on their own terms.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of We Ain't Dying for This, a Black woman's guide to liberation. I'm here today with Cherita Washington to talk about authenticity as liberation. Hey, girl.
Hey.
So we love to know who's in the chat. So let us know where it is that you're listening in from. That also helps us know that we are actually live. And then also, if there's a Black woman that you think might benefit from this conversation, whether she's here with us on hashtag Team Live or hashtag Team Replay, please tag her in the comments or share this live with her. Okay, we see Brian, our friend Brian, who always shows up for us every week. Brian, thank you so much for being here. Where's everyone dialing in from, listening in from? I'm going to wait for a second. What's the Jeopardy music? I don't know. Okay, Jacksonville. And I hope it's Annika. Oaktown, Oakland. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Okay, so now that we know that we're live, and you all are dropping that in the chat as well as sharing this live with someone that you think might benefit from it. For those who have never joined a live before, my name is Crystle Johnson. I'm the founder of Design Your Soft Life, as well as the host of We Ain't Dying for This. And I created We Ain't Dying for This because Black women are frankly dying. And I know that the term weathering has kind of come up again. And Cherita, you and I were talking about this before we began the episode. But it's really the hypothesis that suggests that Black women, and I'm reading, Black women experience chronic stress from racism, microaggressions, and socioeconomic disadvantages, which lead to accelerated aging and poor health outcomes. So the podcast is correctly named We Ain't Dying for This because ultimately we're all experiencing all of these things daily in our lives, and it's causing us to have accelerated aging and poor health outcomes. So the purpose of this live series is really to feature Black women who have broken free from societal expectations, who are living life on their own terms, and who are experiencing liberation in different ways. And I think we know that sometimes when we talk about liberation, it's very black or white. It's this or that. But it's important for us to recognize that liberation is not binary, that we can experience it in different ways, whatever way makes sense for you. Definitely experience it, lean into it, because that's going to help you to live a better life or have a better quality of life. So as I mentioned before, today's episode is around authenticity as liberation. And I know we often, some of us, myself included, have a hard time sometimes showing up authentically. And I believe that people just they want to know who you are. They want to see who you are. They don't want the bells and whistles and the smoke and mirrors. They don't need the glitter. They don't need the glitz. They just want to know who you are. They want to understand that you understand them, that your story resonates with their story, etc. So we really want to encourage people to show up authentically, obviously, if you feel safe doing so. So Cherita, please tell us who you are, what it is that you do, and let's talk about how we connected with each other.
Oh, we had layers of connection. So I'll ponder on that as we attack the first two bullet points. So I'm Cherita Washington. If anyone sees my name and you're questioning how to pronounce it, literally share Margarita put together. So I always like to throw that out there. Pronouns are she, her. And I am someone who's been doing DEI since before DEI had a term. And I think when you're underrepresented and marginalized in any corporate space, you find yourself doing things out of honestly self-defense and advocacy. And then it turns, evolution of time happens and we realize everyone needs the thing that we've all been trying to do to keep ourselves safe. So I got to start off in multiple industries. Y'all can check the LinkedIn and see the eclectic resume. But I got to finally step into the role of doing global diversity, equity, and inclusion. and doing it from multiple lenses of HR as well as multiple lenses of operation. And it's something I'm very passionate about because, I mean, a lot of us have been dealt a bad hand at life, right? A lot of us are systemically still trying to even catch up halfway to those who have gotten a head start. So it's something that I got the blessing to do the job that I'm passionate about from the work that I used to do for free. How else can I throw this in there? Oh, I'm a mom. So no matter what my job is, I got a little girl to take care of. So that's my favorite job that I get to do. How you and I met, I jokingly told my friend, I slid in the DMs, y'all. I saw an awesome Black woman who was doing awesome things, talking about conversations that make some of us uncomfortable, but we need them and they're necessary. And I said, hey, sis, I would love to be part of this, journey that you're on and the journey that you're bringing other Black women through. And you welcomed it with open arms. So here we are. I think it's a testament that we don't have to go above and beyond to show the proof and the worthiness of our stories. So I definitely thank you for the warm reception as well as just the partnership that we've had as we worked up to today.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you for sliding in the DMs. I think people often assume I'm not going to respond or that most people don't respond. I respond, y'all. I send messages back.
Quickly.
Yeah. So if you want to reach out, please do reach out. If being on the show is something that you're curious about or working together or just being connected and exchanging stories, we can do all of the things. And speaking of stories, I know yesterday I posted something about being a first, which I know is something that a lot of Black women experience. So I'm the first person in my family to go to college, to graduate, to work in corporate, to leave the state that I lived in, to make six figures and multi-six figures. I am the definition of a first. So it has come with a lot of challenges. It has come with a lot of fear of losing the thing that I'm running behind, whether that's a job, career, money, whatever it is, just fear of losing the thing, relationships, whatever it is, just a lot of fear of losing a thing. So I feel like I've shown up early on in my career, probably as like a different Crystle at work than the Crystle at home. So I'm juggling these two very different personalities or ways of showing up. And don't get me wrong, obviously, you bring your best parts of yourself to work. So there's obviously going to be differences, but I feel like I spoke differently. I walked differently. I laughed differently. I just had different mannerisms because, again, I felt like I was going to lose something if I showed up authentically. So can you talk to us a little bit about your journey to authenticity?
I wish I could say I was my authentic self longer than I actually have been. I was the kid who grew up in the middle of nowhere, Missouri, actually near a military base, which are typically diverse, but not my personal experience. So I'll say I spent a lot of time acting like the people around me. I thought that was who we were all supposed to be. It wasn't until I went to my HBCU, Lincoln University in Missouri, and I was surrounded by us. And it wasn't in a competitive state where when I was younger, the few Black people that were around me, it was constant competition, right? Who could get the coolest friends, who could get the shoes first, who could make the team. And unfortunately, I was none of the above. We were broke and I'm unathletic. So I was not the cool person growing up. And then I was surrounded by these wonderful people from all different walks of life, international, local, East Coast, West Coast, everything in between. And I got a dose of what it was like to be in a safe space and be myself. Yeah. And I think something that I love about our HBCUs and something that I kind of made it my personal mission is we get to connect, we get to thrive together, we get to have the opportunity of joining certain organizations. But what happens when you graduate is you go right back into a world where you're not surrounded by us. And so I got 4 years undergrad, 2.5 years grad school, getting to know my authentic self, just to kind of remix it for those who were around when I went back into corporate world full time. And so I would say my journey was an ebb and flow of, all right, I'm getting to know myself, but can I be myself? And I remember a short story when I was the first woman who also happens to be Black in one of my previous employers. And all of my peers were older white men and nice guys. Like, it wasn't like, not all of them are horrible, right? But at the same time, I wasn't getting equitable support in meetings. I would get cut off often. I would do the things that everybody else was doing, but it wasn't working for me. And I remember talking to my boss and saying, how do I get the respect of my peers? And bless his heart, he said, do what everyone else is doing. They cut you off, you cut them off. They do it, you do it. And I said, hey, buddy, as a Black woman, I don't get to do that.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're trying to tell me to do. But if I step into these meetings acting like these men, I'm going to be a ghetto, and I won't get to reverse that impression. And so it was one of those things where I had to figure out who deserves what part of my authenticity, because I want to preserve what's precious to me. And not everybody gets to have your 100% authentic self. You might get my 30% today because you don't deserve the other 70%. So it's one of those things where the journey came and it went, and then it came again. But I will say over the last 3 years, and I wish I could say it was longer than that, I've really stepped into spaces knowing that I deserve to be in them. You don't get to call me a diversity hire because something about this diversity is qualified, if not over. And so stepping into spaces and realizing that I was in leadership roles where not a lot of people looked like me, but a lot of people who looked like me looked up to my role. And I didn't want to set them up for failure, where I whitewash who I am. And then you expect every person who looks like me to do the same for you. And so it kind of came down to someone telling me that they stood up to their boss because they knew Cherita wouldn't tolerate that. And I was like, okay, well, this young lady is establishing boundaries that I don't even have while she's trying to be like me. Maybe I need to step up my boundaries. So it's been a beautiful journey of knowing who I am, loving who I am, and then wanting to be in spaces where I could be as much of that as possible. And not just for me, but for those to come and for those who maybe are ahead of me that didn't know it was safe to do so. So it's a lot to carry and a lot to constantly think about, but it's definitely been a journey of unlearning the things that I never should have had to learn to be myself in the first place.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things you mentioned is being at a HBCU. I went to a PWI, but I started off going to HBCU. So I was supposed to go to Morgan State. I had gone to orientation and everything. And I'm from Virginia and my parents are older. So my dad was like, if you stay home, I'll buy you a car. And I was like, okay, I'll stay home and I'll go to this other school. But what I have realized is that I never had the opportunity early on in my life to even understand, like, who is my authentic self. I have literally been a chameleon and someone who just blends into whatever environment that I'm in. What are other people doing? What is acceptable? What are the unspoken rules? And I'm just like sliding into that because I wanted to be likable. And again, the fear of losing something, you just show up the way that other people are showing up. So I do regret the decision not to go to a HBCU because I feel like I would have, like you said, it's been a few years since you've been able to show up as your authentic self. But I'm glad that you were able to see what that looked like before and be able to get back to it or even build onto it. I had to discover it when I was burnt out and tired to really understand, like, who is it that I am? And also, like, how is it that I want to show up? And you said something really important about the percentage that you show up as your authentic self. And I think that's a powerful way to put it because it shows us that we are empowered to show up authentically if we want to. Like, it's not dependent on the people around me, whether I show up authentically or not. It's just like, do you deserve my 70%? Do you deserve my 100%? Because if you don't, you getting 10 today. And that's okay. Because again, that tells us that, like, we have power and you get to show up however it is that you want to show up, whatever that means for you.
100%. And I feel like it's an important note for corporations who say we welcome everyone to bring your authentic self to work, because that's dangerous if you haven't established corporate boundaries of what's safe. Because I could be my 100% Black self and someone else can show up there 100% racist. And you just set the standard that it's all okay. So it's one of those things where you still got to dip your toes in the water and figure out where it's safe to swim. And if it's not safe, you got to figure out what other waters can we be in.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that for you, like when you were able to discover, this is who I am authentically, this is how I want to show up, this is how I deserve to be treated, and this is how I want to experience the workplace, you had to walk away from some things. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll keep referring to it as a journey because I think it's something we're all still walking as we learn more about ourselves daily. I would say the hardest part, and this wasn't your question, but I'm gonna give a bonus answer. The hardest part about being myself was realizing that not everybody wants you to be that. Like you said, it's powerful when you know what you're worth. It's powerful when you know that you can command a room. And it's also something that people don't always expect. And I don't even mean like white people. Sometimes people who look like you don't want you to be yourself because they haven't established being themselves either, right? So it's a gift. It's a gift and a curse, maybe a catch-22 of my HBCU experience because none of us were hating on each other like that. And so something I think that I had to learn in being myself is I can't assume that because you look like me, you're going to have my back as myself too. And so it's one of those journeys where you're constantly taking 2 steps forward, evaluating before you take the next 2 steps. And as someone who checks a lot of boxes, right? Both my parents are retired military. I'm Black. I'm a woman. I have a couple of disabilities. I'm neurospicy. I have a lot of things that make this cake that's Cherita. And I can't remember the name of the woman who was talking about it. Cherita Washington, no relation, by the way, y'all. But she talked about how as a Black woman, she was putting all these people first. And then she realized that she deserved to be one of those people. And as a mother, I can't keep pouring from an empty cup because I'm pouring it into the wrong places. So it came to a point, and I know we'll get into it later, where I had to step down from some things. And I don't quit. You know, we're taught, especially like Black kids, we're taught how much harder we got to work. We're taught how many options we don't have. And we are not, my parents are older too, right? Dad born in the early 40s, mom born in the early 50s. I wasn't taught that I could quit. It's not a luxury and it's not a privilege that my parents had. You dealt with toxic situations because you had to get food on the table. You had to keep your lights on. You got to keep your mortgage paid. And so it's been that journey of what's worth my time and what deserves my worth. Mm-hmm. And when I tell you I stepped down, I had global roles that like were dream jobs, but where they were didn't feel good. And kind of going back to that older parent thing, right? You don't get to feel like it. You wake up, you do it, you go home. And I realized one day after, I took a leave. It's part of your benefits, y'all. Take the leave. You need to take the leave, right? But I got some real special, like, not neurologists, but like psychiatrists to talk to, right? Because we're also taught we shouldn't be going outside of our house to get help. And that don't help. So I went and saw one. I learned that I got diagnosed with PTSD from a toxic work environment. Mm-hmm. Like the threshold of PTSD is, I think, a score of 28 on the test, and I scored a 51, which means that all 4 PTSDs your girl got, and I've never set foot on a physical battlefield. But that's the environment. That's the weathering we talked about, right? Where every single day is like, it's Groundhog's Day of racism. It's Groundhog's Day of sexism. It's Groundhog's Day of misogynoir. It's all of that. And then all you really get for showing up is a high five for being resilient. And I don't think resiliency is something that's not a medal that we're trying to win. Mm-hmm. If you Google or look up from any platform you want, resiliency is literally coming to a point of breaking without breaking. I don't want to be celebrated for not breaking. Stop trying to make me break. Yeah. So it's one of those things that we have to be conscious of. Can I be myself in a safe environment? And if not, what do we do?
Yeah. Oh, all 4 PTSDs. That's wild. And never stepping foot on a battlefield. I think that people often don't recognize the things that we go through in workplaces, how we are invisible, but also hyper visible, how we get treated different. We can do the same exact thing as another person, but for some reason, when we do it, it is the worst thing possible and not comparable. And I think that shows up on a macro level, obviously, like when we think about the justice system and the other things that happen out in the world. Work is just a microcosm of the things that we experience every day outside of work. Yeah. That was hard to hear. Having that high of a score from a workplace. They can be toxic. Can you talk about stepping away from toxic workplaces? And then obviously we want to talk a little bit more about personally stepping away from people, because people can also be toxic. People can also make us feel like we can't show up as ourselves. And I have even felt that way around family members. We'll get to that. But talk a little bit about, like, before we get to it, let's close out the workplace and being able to step away, like those decisions that you made to leave and step away. And I love that you mentioned going on leave, because I think a lot of people don't realize that you have that benefit available to you. Hopefully you have short-term disability through your job. Normally, companies pay for short-term disability, and then you pay for long-term disability. And it's part of your FMLA to be able to take time away if your doctor is signing off on it. So if it's something that you're experiencing where you're in a workplace that's very toxic, then definitely speak to your doctor and figure out, like, how can you make your benefits work for you? That was a perfect thing to add, because again, I think a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we're, to an extent, when I say we, I'll say Black women. I don't speak on behalf of all of us, but those were the voices I had growing up and the voices I still lean to now. Shout out to our brothers, but I'm just saying, like, the people I look up to, I need someone who has what I have to help me get through what I'm going through, right? And so a lot of that stepping away was, I posted about it once, and I'm trying to think of how I worded it, because, you know, sometimes you do it perfectly when you type it out and you try to say it again, it's not pretty. But I was sticking around in a lot of places just to prove a point. That you're not going to run me off. You're not going to scare me away. You're not going to make me feel like I can't do this job. And I realized that just because I had the strength doesn't mean I needed to use it. I need to be strong for my daughter. I need to be strong for myself. I need to be strong for my mom. I need to be strong for people who, whether I get paid from company A, company B, company C, company Z, I have people who really need me to be there for them. And none of them are at a location I need a badge in and out of, right? Mm-hmm. So I had to kind of sit with myself, listen to the therapist that I'm paying well to give me these beautiful lessons in life. And I had to really examine, am I sticking around because I need to be here? And what do I really lose if I step away? And I had a point last year where God was speaking louder than I was listening, where I was part of a layoff. And I was like, nah, y'all not going to get rid of me. I'm going to find something else. And I found something else, and it was worse. And sometimes you got to listen to those voices. Like, sometimes the voices in your head don't mean you're crazy. It means you need to go. And I sat back and I looked around, and it comes to a point where if I'm going to be the only Black woman in the room, I'm going to be the Black woman you respect, or I'm not going to be in the room. You don't get to check a box for diversity, check a box for talent. You don't get to check me off as a box if you're not checking my boxes off for psychological safety. Mm-hmm. And so I sat back, I looked at the money, and I'll be honest with you, not a lot of it was there. But I was like, God's done brought me through any job I've ever left. I came back better. I came back better paid. I came back better secured. I came back with a higher role. You know, I came back better. And so I said, all right, well, you haven't failed me yet. Let me go on this leave and figure out what 60% looks like. And I realized I could live on 60%, which also forced me to be better steward of my finances. If I don't need to spend what X, Y, and Z, I don't have to. Mm-hmm. But to the original point, the goal was to be somewhere where I was going to be okay, because your coping mechanisms don't work when you're not able to soak them in and use them. The coping mechanisms become part of a library that collect dust. If as soon as you learn it, you go right back into war.
Yeah.
And I was tired of fighting with people who weren't worth the fight. I was tired of fighting for people who weren't even respecting me enough to fight fair. And I just got tired of wasting the energy. I finally knew what I was worth. And if none of y'all want to see that in me, then I don't need to see you anymore. And it was very liberating to step away, knowing that the things that I built will still be there. The people who saw me build it will still make sure I get my credit. And if they don't, I'll build something somewhere else. I think so many of us get wrapped up in the title and make it part of our identity. And I brought up that layoff for a reason, because I didn't know who I was when I wasn't global president of this, when I wasn't global X, Y, and Z of that. I was just Carmen's mom, which, mind you, like I said, my favorite job, but it's a job also that is thankless, right? So where do I go from here? And the opportunity presented itself that, you know what, step one's taking care of you. You can't pray for a miracle if you're not in a position to receive it. So I had to sit back and really just subject myself to what hard really looks like when you're trying to be on a stricter budget. But at the end of the day, walking away, it's like that meme you see where a girl's holding a teddy bear and Jesus is trying to take it and she doesn't want to, and he has a bigger bear behind his back. A lot of us are holding on to stuff that we don't even need just because we have the strength to hold on to it. And it's like you said, the weathering, it's affecting us. My mom didn't get Alzheimer's and dementia and all the things she's got layered now from living a healthy life. She got it from doing everything she had to do until she literally had nothing left. And my mom doesn't know who I am anymore. I don't want my daughter to watch me struggle just to watch me forget her, just so she can struggle again and continue the cycle.
Yeah. Thank you for being so vulnerable and so transparent with your story. And I'm so sorry to hear about your mom. That is really hard for someone that you love, like someone who birthed you, not to know who you are. I remember when my grandmother went through that and she didn't know who I was or who any of her children were. And it's a really hard experience to go through. And like you said, I think it's admirable that you paused and said, I don't want my daughter to experience me in this way. I want her to experience what healthy looks like. And we talked about soft parenting, which was a conversation we've had early on the live series as well, just how it is that we show up differently than our parents may have shown up, because we want to break the cycle. We want to do things differently. We want to live. I personally want to live. I don't want to exist. I want to live. I want to thrive. I don't just want to survive. So there are definitely things that we have to do differently that we didn't necessarily see growing up.
And we got to give ourselves grace, because we're doing the things that no one prepared us to do. We're literally, a lot of us are our ancestors' wildest dreams. And if they could dream big, I don't know if they would have dreamed Cherita Washington to be a global director of an international company. I don't think we even would have thought, I don't think my mom would have thought that. I didn't think about that. Yeah. Right. And so sometimes it's really just that walk on faith where I need to be whoever I was designed to be, wherever I'm supposed to be, and kind of just walk from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point that you made about not imagining these things, I think we also need to pause and think about the things that we have achieved. And I've said this before on an earlier episode, but I was at an event, and the woman was talking. She was an author. She had all these different accolades, and she said something, and I thought about it, and I was like, wait, I did that too. You're on an international stage talking about this thing that you accomplished, and I'm like, wait. I didn't think this was important, but I guess it is important. She was sharing how she retired her father. I'm like, wait, I retired my dad too. and didn't even consider that it was an achievement. It was just like, okay, like my dad has worked so hard his entire life. My dad is 85. I'm adopted. So he's much older. Like your parents were, actually, is what you said. I think you said your dad was 40s.
Yeah.
Yep. And my dad was born in 38. So yes. So just hearing that, I'm like, wow, wait a minute. Like I haven't even taken a chance, the time to step back and think about all the things that I've achieved, because I'm always on to the next thing. So in addition to what you said, I think we definitely need to do that too. Is just sit down and think about all the great things that we've done, because we've done some amazing things. We are brilliant. And I'm not gonna say we're magic. Like I like the word magic, but sometimes Black girl magic kind of dehumanizes us a little bit, because it's like, oh, you're magic, you're resilient, you can do it all.
You're a unicorn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just because we can doesn't mean we should. And you said that.
And honestly, why does our success have to be magical because you didn't expect it? It's not magical when anyone else does it.
Yeah. So true. So true. So to close out, well, we're not really closing, but the last thing I want to ask you about or get to is toxic people that are outside of work. That could be your family, they could be your friends, and they're people that maybe you don't feel like you can show up authentically with, but you keep dealing with them because maybe they helped you in the past, or maybe they're your family and you're like, I don't do that with family. Families should love each other and stick around and be together. Or relationships that you've had with people. Maybe you fell in love with them at one point in your life and they've kind of shifted and become toxic. And now you feel like you have to stay. So how do you, one, identify that something is toxic? And then two, be able to walk away from it or liberate yourself from it, or even set boundaries?
I think it's my connection, but can you repeat the first question for me again, sis?
Yes. First question is, how do we recognize that our relationship with a person, an individual, is toxic? And then, like, how do we liberate ourselves?
I think we recognize when someone's toxic when we realize we're putting out a lot more energy than we're receiving. And I don't want to say that as a keeping track, tit for tat kind of thing, right? I think it's everyone's different. If my love language when I love someone is giving, someone else's love language to me may be listening to me talk all day, right? So I don't mean doing it exactly the way that I'm giving it. But I was the person who in college, I was going broke keeping friends, because I was like, all right, well, I'm the one who has the job. I'm the one who's making more. I need to be the one to take care of these people. And I realized that these people only showed up when I was taking care of them. And I think on significant points in my life where people will tell you when they're not supposed to be around you. They're not going to say it directly, but it's that Maya Angelou quote, right? If someone tells you who they are, believe them. Yeah. And we got to stop denying who people are telling us they are. And I think we should also really consider who we're being loyal to and why, and emphasis on the why. You brought that up where, like, that's my family, that's my friend, that's my soror, that's my homie from work. That's the person that I'm supposed to like be like this with. But if we're supposed to be like this, why aren't you showing up for me? Mm-hmm. And so it comes to a point where I'll use my divorce as a great experience. And this is in no disrespect to my daughter's father. He's an amazing father. But in our case, it didn't work out for the marriage perspective. And I remember thinking to myself that we can't go through a divorce because I'm trying to break this generational curse of divorce. We're going to make this work. We're going to sit. We're going to tough it out. And I prayed on it. And God was like, you're trying to break the wrong curse. The curse isn't divorce. The curse is an unhealthy household. My daughter's never seen her father and I argue. And honestly, now that we're not married, we don't have to, right? Like the things you argue about when you're man and wife is not my business no more. And so I realized when that divorce happened that if I can walk away from a man that I had a child with, my only boyfriend in life, if I can walk away from someone that I've known since I was 18 because it wasn't what was good for me, then why the hell am I letting all these other people sit around?
Yeah.
And so it really was having to look back and what was my benchmark? And okay, if we're hitting a standard, that's cool, but is my standard high enough? And I sat back and looked at all the things in my professional life, because, you know, that gives you data, that gives you benchmarks, that gives you things where you can look at it and nobody can tell you weren't winning. And I've kind of quantified the people in my life kind of around the same way. And I recognized who was and wasn't there for me. And I got so blunt into who I am and my approach that I would tell people, hey, you're not showing up the way I thought you would show up. Like, you need help? Do I need to tell you what showing up looks like for me? Like, tell me what you need for me to be there. And folks were like, oh, nah, you misunderstood. You don't get to decide my level of understanding, right? And so also looking at if somebody genuinely cares about you and you tell them that they're hurting you and they don't stop hurting you, then you're setting yourself up for self-harm. Mm-hmm. And so it comes to a point where you got to step back from some people who already stepped away from you. Them folks been walked out the door. They just keep letting you hop in and out of the threshold. And so I really evaluated why I was attached to so many people. And I look back at the strength that it took to go through a divorce. And I don't even got to file government paperwork to let these people go. Well, what are we holding on for? Yeah. And if you want to grow and be better and come back, then, you know, I won't say the door is always open, but we can, you know, kind of like how a job tells you weren't selected, but we'll keep you on file. We can keep your friendship on file. We'll revisit that in the future. We can re-interview later and we'll figure it out. But there are some folks who really just don't deserve you. And if you're going to walk away from a job that's paying you, then you can definitely walk away from the people who aren't.
Girl. As the people are saying in the chat, there are gems being dropped. Preach, because it's so true, especially when you talked about the divorce situation and like trying to break curses. Like when my wife and I got divorced, I was like, who gets married to get divorced? Like, I don't want to get a divorce, even though I knew that our relationship was toxic. I was so tied to this fairy tale idea of the story that we could tell our kids, like later on in life, about how we met each other and how, you know, we got together, because we've known each other over 20 years. We went to the same high school and we reconnected with each other in 2016. Beautiful story. But that meant that I was ignoring all the red flags, all of them.
Yeah.
Because I was too focused on the story. What does everyone else see? So it's so important for us to be able to make those decisions, to see the thing that they aren't showing up for you in the ways that you need to be showed up for, and to be able to really walk away without feeling like you need to appease another person and for that person to feel good or your parents to feel good because my daughter stayed married and I'm unhappy. Or like you said, your child is seeing an unhappy, broken home. She don't need to see that. That's the thing to focus on, is like having a healthy home. So thank you for that.
And it's beautiful because she gets to watch me make decisions for my happiness, which I never got to see my mom do. My daughter will ask me questions. Kids are smart. Sometimes they're smart Alex, but like kids will know. And it was funny because I started a new job, right? And my daughter was like, I like this new job. Told her nothing about it. She knew I was becoming a director somewhere, which I learned later on that she thought I was in movies. Like, she didn't realize what directors were outside of film. So even allowing her to see mommy's doing something for mommy so that mommy can be more there for you. And I'm a huge advocate, and like some folks may, shame me virtually, and I'll take it. But I think it's BS when we say never let them see you cry. Now you gonna see how you impacted me. And if you want to call me weak for it, that's fine. But you're not going to say you didn't impact me. You're not going to say you didn't know. And so a lot that I learned growing up, and even things that I look back at my resume, my resume is impressive. And it takes a lot for me to say that now, because, you know, it wasn't accomplishments. It was, you go to work and you do what you're supposed to do. What do you mean impressive? But I sat back and I looked at it, and it's like, these are all the things I did by myself because I had no hope. I had no help. I had little pockets of villages here and there that helped me keep my sanity, and I'm grateful for those people. But I looked at my resume and I was just like, I wonder how great I could have been if I wasn't operating on survival mode all the time. Mm-hmm. These successes are literally the things I had to do to be equally as good as my peers who didn't look like me. And so looking at the things I've accomplished, I have a higher expectation for everybody and everything around me, because I know I'm good under pressure. But to your point, I'm like, I'll just highlight the bottom, like liberation through radically living soft. I don't want to be burning out to churn out success after success after success just for people who I could get laid off again. I mean, pray to God I don't, I'm gonna knock on some wood. But I want to be successful because I want to be successful. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to paint a fairy tale on how it happened. It's hard. It's going to be BS sometimes. But I had like 4 wins at work last week. And the cool part about it wasn't what I actually did. It was the stuff I didn't have to go through to do it. Yeah. And it's interesting because, just to come full circle on weathering, Black don't crack. Like we all are aware of the phrase. I think we're all very familiar that it's very accurate. But if we're aging and we still look good, imagine how much better we look if, like, we didn't have to be on defense mode all the time. Yeah. Maybe my real hair would be this long. Like maybe I would be this impeccable, you know, healthy and safe individual. And I think that it's important that we celebrate our wins, but we also evaluate our environments, because the win shouldn't be enough to keep you there. The environment should. And that goes for your people and like your professional life.
Mic drop. I don't think I need to say anything else. You're amazing. I am so thankful for you sliding in my DMs, because this is a great conversation about authenticity as liberation. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing with those who are listening live and those who will listen on the replay how to recognize when they're in a toxic environment, and just the fact that you have choices to do something different. There is nothing that you are required to stay in. There are always options. And even if those options don't appear clear in the moment, honestly, what we need most of the time is stillness, to be able to sit there, rest and relax, to understand what is the next thing that I need to do, because that's going to change your overall energy. It's going to give you the opportunity to think outside the box, because when you are in a toxic and chaotic environment, all you can see is the negative stuff. You're not going to be able to see anything else. So thank you so much for pouring into us tonight. And I'm so excited about next week's conversation we'll be having with Jessica Farm, and we'll be talking about boundaries of liberation. Jessica is the founder of Blackness in the Workplace. Jessica is someone, if anyone follows her on LinkedIn, she always posts GIFs. And she always posts really funny stories about her experiences in the workplace. And she's always like, it's Friday, y'all, or it's Tuesday, y'all. And I'm always like, I love that so much. It makes her so recognizable if you see any of her posts. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation. Just another brilliant Black woman that we're going to have the opportunity to speak with this week, because we're worth it and we ain't dying for this.
Please tell Jessica I love her. She's one of the voices on LinkedIn that let me know I could be my authentic self virtually too. And I think it's women like her, it's Liz Leba, it's Future Kane, it's Lisa Hurley, it's you, right? It's all the people who are not just living authentically and not putting it in the sight of other people. It's folks who are like, this is how I feel, and this is how I feel on this Wednesday, y'all. Like I love when she
Yeah, I be cracking up And I will tell her, hopefully she's listening, but I will definitely let her know. But thank you so much again for being so vulnerable and transparent and open to sharing your story with us. And we'll see y'all next week, y'all.
Thanks, y'all.